No problem. I'm happy to be here. So I'm going to go ahead and start presenting. Welcome. And again, just type in your questions in chat. I don't believe in a parking lot, and I'll be monitoring the chat, or people can definitely say, hey, Genevieve, you have something in chat. I just uploaded my Padlet link onto chat as well. A couple of those resources that I did add were some in response to your questions that I fielded. And so this Rigby leveled library and the guided reading level and Lexile correlation chart are some of the ones that have to do with the questions. The participant guide is right here. And then I was talking yesterday about culturally responsive text. And so this document just separates out those culturally responsive texts and are highlighted here. And then the main question that I wanted to answer for K1, somebody was like, hey, you showed us the articulation videos. Those were great. Do you have pictures that go along with the articulation video? And so if you do a simple search with the keyword articulation, it's going to come up to a printable, and the printable has those pictures that you can have for your wall. So
That's
awesome.
awesome.
I wanted definitely to point that out, especially for my K1 group. The last big thing that I wanted to point out is somebody asked in regards to the daily show and teach slides. If you guys don't have Microsoft, it's very difficult to open. So let me kind of show you really quickly. I'm going to do Be a Super Citizen week 1 lesson 2, and I'm going to open it, which is going to download it. I've got Google Slides open right here. So if you go to your blank document, go to File and then Open. And then go to Upload. I'm actually just going to drag and drop it. Everything for I cannot see anything that doesn't transfer. So I wish I had like airplane music for you, elevator music. And so everything does transfer into the Google Slides. And again, as you present it, like for the Let's Blend words, it's just a matter of choosing the slide and then dragging and dropping it. And so that's the quote unquote interactive aspect of the slide. All right, those were the big things that I definitely wanted to cover. So let's go ahead and get started. Are there any questions about those 3 main questions? All right, so we're going to talk about Into Reading assessments, the data they produce, how you can use the data to really effectively inform your instruction. And then we're going to start out by talking about Teacher's Corner. So the learning outcomes are on the screen. It's exactly what I just said, that what we're going to do. And then I said interlink. I've already posted my link into the Padlet. So Teacher's Corner, there's a couple of different things I'll definitely encourage you guys to do. Join us on Facebook. If you go to your Facebook account and just type in Teacher's Corner from HMH, you can join the group. In the group, and let me go ahead and show you guys. In the group, we've done a lot of different things. One of my most favorite things, and this is going to be my personal, well, I don't have a business Facebook, but if you just do HMH Teacher's Corner, you can see right here we have, this is an Earth Day poster that was uploaded. What is one thing you would add to HMH? It's really a great site during Christmas or during Valentine's Day. What we did slide virtual slide backgrounds. And so I definitely encourage you to join that. It started without me going on. The easiest way to introduce you guys to Teacher's Corner is through this video. So let me go ahead and play it for you guys.
Should we be hearing something?
Yes, you should. Hold on. You should be hearing something. I'm wondering, I'm going to drop this video onto my Padlet as well and share the link to the video and then just go into showing you guys the Teacher's Corner. But thanks for stopping me. I never know if it works. Some classes it does, some classes it doesn't. So if you go to your Teacher's Corner, which is in your professional learning tab, you're going to find a plethora of resources. The first one I want to point out to you is our live events. I know I hosted a live event for schools up in New York City, and it wasn't just opened up to New York City, it was opened up to nationally. And it was your questions answered, and they just went in there and started typing in their questions in the chat and us fielding questions. There was 350 people on there, so it was a little bit overwhelming, but all of these are free, and so I would definitely encourage you guys to log on if you can and go through the live event. In your getting started, you have a plethora of resources actually from below, from program support to our break room. There's a bunch of different resources in there. Everything that you've learned in getting started, I am 100% sure you could find an article that deals with the same exact subject. And on the bottom, you can see there's different articles, there's videos, there's interactive components, and it gives you about the time frame it's going to take. And just like Ed, your filters are going to be your friends. And so I would go in there and encourage you to filter out by into reading or reading growth measure, or even Ed, your friend in learning. And look at the topics. I don't know if I showed you the Bridge and Grow resource. I'll show that to you at the end if we have some time. And I think there's a couple slides in it. But it is a really good resource to get, point of use answers to some questions and feel support. We also have the break room. The break room sometimes has interesting videos, interesting I'm trying to think, topics. One of them, and I think we took it off, was yoga, and the person leading it was talking a lot about yoga with goats, so that was always interesting. But this again doesn't necessarily have to deal with into reading, but you as a person, and then you could definitely sort by all resources. So if you guys have not gone in to discover this, again, this is a great resource, and I will drop the video into my Into Reading, and it gives you a good idea of what it is. All right, without further ado, let's go in and look at data and assessments. Are there any questions about Teacher's Corner?
No, but we do have a question about when presenting a read aloud or big book, when you turn the page, it takes a few seconds before the next page loads. Any suggestions for that?
I find that Chrome is the best browser to navigate Ed with. And it doesn't matter if you have it open. It's not like a YouTube video where it will upload faster.
Okay.
So yeah. Oh, and I did forget to mention, we do have a family room. So on the student's platform, if the student goes to their Welcome Student and they have a tab called For Families, it is broken out very similarly to the Teacher's Corner, but it has specific information for the family and for the student. So just know that support is there as well. And obviously you have different shareables and different program support. And students can find that under For Family and in their family rooms. All right, now I'm really going to move on. So currently, how does assessment data currently inform your instruction? You know, from 20 years ago, we have definitely learned to use data differently. And as you reflect on the questions on the bottom of the screen, you know, how to engage in progress monitoring, what are the benefits of using data? As you reflect on there, I want to talk about progress monitoring. When it's implemented correctly, has definitely been proven to have benefits for students and teachers. And according to, I'm trying to think, the National Center on Student Progress Monitoring, consistent and persistent progress monitoring really helps your students learn more quickly because they're receiving differentiated and adaptive instruction. It also supports you in making more informed decisions and will help you by providing the evidence of student progress to hold students accountable for their learning. The power of progress monitoring is in providing that meaningful performance data while students are still learning so that you're able to adjust the instruction. Into Reading has formative and summative assessments. And so when you couple those with actionable feedback, they really work together to support your students in building that true comprehension of the material. Also, it'll help you in making those informed decisions. And so this multi-layered assessment data provides a great and holistic picture of that student's progress and monitoring. So Into Reading is built on the promise of students achieving those targeted outcomes. It does this through gathering all that data and critical feedback loops for really just-in-time instruction at each student's level. I've said it time and again that I haven't seen a level of differentiation and individualization from any other curriculum that I've worked with, HMH or not, and resources aplenty that come with Into Reading. So on the left side of this image, you're going to see different Into Reading assessments. So you've got your selection quizzes, your reading growth measure, all the way down to your module assessments. This all collects data on your students' performance. And then when students complete these assessments online, and if you utilize Ed collects this data and based on student performance really provides those recommendations such as how to group students, which instructional resources to use, even what standards are being met. I'm going to take a screenshot of this slide and send it to you guys because I think this is a great slide with the purpose and assessment. So these are the different Into Reading assessment you're going to use on a more regular basis. You've got your screening assessments, which you're going to administer at the beginning of the school year to give you that preliminary information about students' performance. So diagnostic assessments are a follow-up for students who score below expectations on the screening assessment. And notice that in addition to the intervention assessment, the guided reading benchmark assessment and the reading growth measures are listed. For you guys will be using those guided reading benchmark assessments. And you're going to administer these assessments at the beginning of a year to get that baseline, whether it's the Lexile level or guided reading level. Our next is the formative assessments. These obviously provide that ongoing feedback on how students are meeting the learning objectives. And so embedded in your teacher's guides, you have those correct and redirect suggestions. But then you have your assortment of assessments, whether it's the quizzes for the review leveled readers or the weekly assessments. And then finally, you have the summative assessment. So these are the module assessments, which assess that mastery of the skills through a module. So I'm going to go ahead and very quickly talk about this slide just because you guys will be doing the reading benchmark, but the HMH reading assessment is for grades 2 through 6. And so this is not pertainable to you guys as much. And it doesn't even show up on your account. It used to. And in fact, last February, I did the reading assessment with first graders at one of my schools and walked them through it because we were just interested to see what the data would be used. But it does spit out the reading comprehension and their Lexile level. And then it gives you the growth report. But for you guys, let's talk about the guided reading benchmark assessment. I know last year when COVID first hit, they asked me to do a video of me assessing my daughter, but my daughter at that time was in 5th grade, and she was a horrible actress for the actual doing of the guided reading benchmark. But the whole kit can be used as a screener assessment to really determine students' independent and instructional reading level. The kit's available in print or can be downloaded as a PDF from Ed. So if you guys go to your Ed account, Discover, and actually I'm going to go into grade 1. And it's going to be your assessment tab. Again, filter out by component. Now, I know I worked with a school in Ohio. They printed out all the foundational skills and Word Study Studio lessons. They also printed out the entire benchmark evaluation guides for each teacher. But the guide tells you how to use it, how often, and where do you even start with your students. And it's a very, I won't say it's a very quick process because it's not. It's a great interactive piece that allows you to assess your students. So, and it walks you through all the steps. And then it's very easy to tally up the errors and understand what it's asking you to. And then there's obviously the test at the end for each student. The test, you can assign it on Ed, obviously, but you have that option. Ooh, Ed just restarted. And so I would encourage you guys to definitely use the benchmark assessment because after you tally and record your students' responses, you'll get the level. Does anybody have any questions about the benchmark assessment? All right. Let's go ahead and look at the formative assessments. Remember, we're going to administer these to monitor student learning. We're going to adjust instruction. You're going to find correct and redirect throughout your teacher's book. Again, it's going to be with that little check mark with the arrow. You're going to know which students require the most support in these activities and then follow up with either additional instruction or one of the many resources that we suggest. Next, you have your selection quizzes. The selection quizzes are administered after the first read of the selection to measure that comprehension of the My Book selection. I know in some of the classrooms that I've been in, we just did it together as a whole, or I projected the actual quiz up and I had them take a sheet of paper and they went in and wrote 1A, 2B, 3C. It's a short five multiple choice question assessment. Ed will automatically grade for you if you do it, administer it on Ed, or honestly, I've done it as a whole class together with it projected on. And I will say with my littles, you do have that one kid go, ooh, hey. And so it's just really funny. All the weekly assessments are going to be listed for your module. They consist of 10 to 15 questions depending on the grade level. These measure those foundational skills, comprehension, and grammar. And so you could look at the week at a glance page, kind of review the skills that are going to be measured in the weekly assessment. And then you guys have leveled reader quizzes. These are 5 multiple choice items to measure that comprehension of the leveled readers. I know the second half of the year, no student in my classroom, either when I was teaching or even now in the classrooms that I do work with on a consistent basis, read a book without filling out either like the graphic organizers or some of the questions that I've taken from the Take and Teach cards and created a document or the quiz. So they have an option of those 3 things to do. Students have the opportunity to demonstrate their knowledge by completing different fun, engaging performance tasks. I know on my connections document on my Padlet, I have the performance task listed at the back. And it's overwhelming when you do the getting started and you see these performance tasks, with everything else that we're throwing at you to cover in one day. It's like, oh, and I have to do the performance task. Teachers of grade 3 to 6 have the option to assign the performance task, but I know for kindergarten, it's that first week, that performance task is talking about, I think it's like the first module, making a guide for incoming kindergartners. So teachers can view a summary of each task as well as the skills here, and you could assign it. The end of unit writing task is a writable connection that you could assign, but that's only for grades 3 through 6. And it mimics the performance, the one that's exactly on ed. So summative assessments. Remember, we're going to administer these, I'm trying to think, over the course of the module or the semester or the year. So these module assessments are listed on Welcome to the Module, obviously bottom left-hand corner. These offer summative data about your students' learning after the module. You can administer these to measure students' proficiency in the critical skills that are covered. And again, the HMH growth measure is an interim summative assessment. So right now, what assessments do you guys find yourself currently using on a regular basis? Especially for kindergarten and first grade.
If you could put your ideas in the chat, that would be helpful. Also, Genevieve, we had a question that was placed in the chat, and I think that it's important to address with everyone because this is a question always on our minds. What is expected from a division level? What will we be using? And what is that guidance? And so, as everyone knows, we have a multitude of different assessments before us within HMH, of course, but also other assessments that we're expected to administer, such as PALS, EKRP, even though I realize that's math, and then county guidelines, such as making sure that you're benchmarking and you have an idea of where your students are. As a division, we have not indicated by what means you would be determining your guided reading groups or your students' reading levels. We're just asking you to determine them. And that's in our reading benchmark expectations, which that is still on our website for you to refer to. However, what we do encourage you to do is, with the flexibility you have in the selection of assessments in order to, for example, determine that reading level, it would be important to compare. So if you're currently using DRA, maybe Jan's new assessment program, Jan Richardson, some folks are doing Fontes and Pinnell, some are using HMH, by the way. It would be important to compare those different assessments and what they have to offer, and figure out which one might be best. And this is in conjunction and communication with your administrators, of course, and making sure that you're on the same page as a school. But as a division, we want you getting those benchmarks and knowing where your students are, and then monitoring and planning and informing, your instruction for them accordingly. However, HMH has a lot of, we know, everything that they have, as far as assessments is aligned to what eventually you would be using to teach with, and the guided reading books and that sort of thing. So there's an advantage there with that alignment, through and common thread through all of the materials within HMH. So that's why we're encouraging you to really examine and compare certain things. And so we're seeing a plethora of different assessments that you're using. Genevieve, can you see these different ideas?
I am. I've turned it back to my Microsoft meeting. So the module test, the benchmark assessment, the weekly selection quizzes, those are a no-brainer to go ahead and use. Like I said, sometimes I just even projected it on the board. I'm like, take out a piece of paper and write 1A, 2B, 3C, just because, well, I'm trying to be a little bit more conscious about how much paper that we use, and we all know that the printables into reading is abundant, and so sometimes, like I said, I'll just project it. Sarah, you'll like to explore the benchmark assessments. I really like our benchmark assessments, and I'm trying to think if this is it, just because it gives you everything you need and the exact steps. You do create a paper trail for your students, and in fact, talking about assessments, and especially given assessments this year, I know the EOGs, they don't count for our school district, and I would say count and put up my fingers in apostrophes. And so some of my friends were like, we're not sending our kids on those days. And I'm like, what? Why not? Like, do you not know how important these are for teachers to use to measure where your students are, right? And so for me, any type of assessment, I'm all about it, just so that I can best serve the needs of my individual students at the end of the day.
And it's important to mention too, Genevieve, would you possibly agree that we want to be cognizant of not over-assessing?
Oh, absolutely. That's why with the benchmark assessments, you do it, I'm trying to think how we did at the beginning and the end of the year, and then that midpoint. And it's good. So I always waited a couple of weeks before I do any type of that benchmark assessment whenever I was teaching, and even with into reading. I know I first stepped into the classroom in September, and I was permanently assigned to a couple classrooms to start with, and working with the other teacher who is the full-time, part-time sub. And I'm shaking my head because I just think it's a very interesting title that we had. We didn't do any of the benchmark assessment until 3 or 4 weeks out of the year, because to take a student and look at, and I'm just going to pull them, to take a student within the first couple of weeks of school and say, all right, we're going to start at A and then we're going to continue going on. I mean, that's just a lot for them. And once we got to meet with them, and once we got to evaluate them, we had a better idea of where to start within the benchmark evaluation guide. Now, refresh my memory. Do you guys utilize iRead in any of the connected solutions?
No, we did not.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we weren't able to purchase that. Our first year, it was active and live and free, so to speak.
Yeah.
And noticing last year that some still had some access to it, but I think that's really gone away, and so we can't count on it, so to speak.
No. I was gonna say you definitely couldn't count on it. I couldn't remember if I had asked you guys that question before. But I'm trying to think with the assessments. Yes, it's important to not over assess them, but there's some things that you can do where it's not going to seem like a formalized or a formal test, right, or quiz. And there's things that you can do in your classroom to make it seem not as much of a pressure situation by the way you introduce them. So like the selection quizzes, introducing them in a very non-formal way, even as simple as projecting them onto the whiteboard and say, let's all do this together, right? Can take some of the stress and anxiety that comes from being formally assessed.
So we have a question where to find the phonological awareness assessment.
That's what I was actually going to ask. Terry, which ones are you referring to as the phonological awareness assessments?
And Michelle asked the same too. Yeah. And I don't know if they mean the phonological awareness piece within a benchmark, maybe. I'm not sure, but ladies, if you could be more specific, that might help us.
I was gonna say, because I'm not 100% sure. We could.
And you're welcome to turn on your mic.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Because I don't know of anything just isolated for that, right? It's within others. Okay.
So I was gonna.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt. I just commented, I cannot remember where I found those. They are specific to the phonemic awareness. They're usually on day 5 of the week.
They're under printables.
Oh.
Thanks, Donna.
You're welcome.
I know what you mean.
They are really good because they go with exactly the skills that we teach for the phonological awareness. And they're actually in the lesson plan in the teacher's manual for the 5th day. I had printed them all off so that I had them all, the paper copies. So I was trying to remember where we had found those.
No, that's fine. It's going to be on the 5th day of every day. So let me go into my 5th day, lesson 5.
If you want to walk us through the steps on how to get there, that would be appreciated. Thanks.
I don't mind telling you this, and I'm not proud of it. I was on an all sugar diet.
I'm actually going to go to my week at a glance first just to see.
Katie, I think you have your TV on or something on.
I was going to say.
Let me see if I can.
All right. So I'm going to week at a glance. Word warm up. Let me look and see. Printables. Use printable phonological awareness for reinforcement. Okay. Are you talking about these right here, these PDFs?
Yep, that's what we use.
Perfect. All right. I was like, wait a minute. They're not listed as assessments, but I understand how you are using. So how I found them, and I'll just model from module 3. If you go to your teacher's guide, and I went straight to, it's always going to be lesson 5, 10, or 15 of each week. And go to your word work warm-up. Right here where it says use printable phonological awareness to gauge which tasks need reinforcement. That's going to pull up your, it is an assessment because it's telling you to use it as an assessment, but that's right there as a printable. Thank you. So again, go to either lesson 5, lesson 10, or 15, depending on the week, and then you'll find it right there as a printable. And again, it says it to use it to gauge reinforcement. I'm gonna have to put that in the note to make sure that we talk about this for the rest of the grades too, Sue Ellen and all right.
Absolutely. Thank you, ladies. Very much.
Absolutely. I'm gonna have to add that to my slide deck to talk about that.
And like you, I was in a different realm, thinking strictly assessment, but I see what they mean.
Yep, absolutely. Oh, was there? I heard the blurb.
Yeah.
Put the
In
phenol.
your search button, you can also just type in printables and then type in phonological awareness, and then you'll get it.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. So really quickly to go through the assessments. Obviously, this is for grade 1. There's over 45 pages of assessment, which 45 times 20 is close to 1,000 assessments. Definitely use your components to filter out what you're looking for. And I'm trying to think, you could assign it directly on Ed. And so what I do, and I think I shared this with you, every Sunday I pull up my first grade, or I think second grade class list, and I go in and assign them Rigby readers, because at my school they're not allowed to take home bags of books, but they can log on to Ed and they always have books to read within their which I've assigned to them. I also assign to them the quiz so that they have the option, because as the second half of the year, this is one of the tools that I tell all my students that they have to do one of 3 things: take the quiz, or do the quick write, or there's graphic organizers. One of the things I make sure I do is I change the due date. So the quizzes are only available on the Fridays of each week, but I assign these on Sunday. And it's important to note, and I don't remember if I showed you guys, if you change that due date to that particular date, so I just change that due date, I could go into filter by training classes, assign it to my students that are in that reading level. And then once the student logs in on their dashboard on that Friday, it's going to show up directly on their dashboard. So you can see right here, here's that Rigby leveled reader, and they're gonna be able to access it without going into assignments or even the Discover tab. And so it's really simple for them, just because I'm like, hey, log on to your dashboard, and if you want to, you could take that quiz. So by changing the due date, and especially for my kindergarten through second, changing that due date and allowing them to have access to it directly from their dashboard makes a huge difference on how they get it. So that's assigning or selecting assessments, assigning it. There's multiple ways to see the assessments that are related with each chapter. Or each module, you could see it based off of the module. If you click on your view resources, and again, you're going to filter it out by the assessment and instructional purpose. And from there, you could hone down and drill to what you're looking for, whether it's that module assessment, weekly assessment, online, or selection quizzes. And then you could pinpoint what students you're going to assign it to, whether it's a group of students. And I talked to you guys, I think last time, about forming the groups. So like for my ELs, I have specific resources that I only assign to them. And I've already created the groups on the front end, so it makes it easier for assigning purposes. One of the things I know I did this with my 4th graders. I had 6 of them who didn't do so well on end of module assessment. You could always create your own module assessment if you go into My Assessment and then create an assessment. I'm going to go ahead and name this Test 7. You're going to want to select Reading and Language Arts. And it's as simple as going in and finding what module you were just in together, looking at all the different items. And so usually what I do is I select a couple questions from each, the module assessment, as well as the individual week assessments. And you just click on there and click add, and it populates. So you can see every time I click add, there's another question answered or added. And you could also create your own own questions. The nice thing about all the data that Ed or creating your own assessments through Ed collects and scores that for you. So you can see right here my items. I could go in there, and I've already created some questions that have nothing to do with modules. So the Cat in the Hat was written by, and who's Pinky from Pinky in the Brain as a child of the 80s. And then the weather is. So once I hit save and done, I could assign it directly to those 6 kids who didn't do so well as a retest if I wanted to. So you have the options to create your own assessment as well. All right, let me go in and see. Let's go into the reports. Skip all these things, assigning. All right, so when you go under My Class and you go into data and reports, the amount of information that Ed spits out for you is I mean, it's crazy. So we began our learning by looking at the importance of data and feedback. And now that you're familiar with all the different assessments, here's the data. And so the reports tab allows you to toggle between the assessment report, the standard report, and the growth report. For you guys, again, you guys won't have any information in the growth report. So when you pull up one of your students or any of the assessments, it's going to list all the assessments, and you can see the individual reports by clicking See Report. When you click See Report, you'll see the most commonly missed questions. You'll see what standards you may need to address. And so again, it spits out a lot of information at you. So I'm going to actually go to My Class, Data and Reports. And I'm sorry, mathematics is always first. New features that we have added the export this into an Excel spreadsheet, and you have the ability to customize it. So right here, let me look. This was an online, wow, that's a online selection test for the Odyssey, which is not on the reading level. So we're going to go to, I'm going to find one that's age appropriate. So this is a selection quiz, I think for a 5th grade book. But again, it's going to show you the most commonly missed questions so that you could address it. So I may choose to address item 2 with everybody. It's going to tell me in regards to the assessment proficiency, it takes into factor their Lexile level. So the student has taken the growth assessment, and then it matches it up to the assessment. And then any standards that I may need to revisit. So I definitely need to revisit the standard with all of my students because they all got a 0 on it. The nice thing is I can see how much time was spent, and then I can go through and see right here it lists what standard it's tied to, how many possible points. So again, anything that you assign through Ed will spit out a lot of data for you guys. Also, on every individual assessment, I forgot to show you, there's that blue button for recommend groups. And so Ed will sort your student out for you and recommend groups so that you can revisit the learning. Does anybody have any questions about the data that Ed spits out? Sandra, for kindergarten, it's challenging to get them to do the actual assignments. They have to use badge, log on, then Google, and their name, then HMH. I know when I was in the classroom, and I still am in the classroom, each kid has their own iPad and they just hold up their QR code for them to do single sign-on. And every school I've been in has done it very differently. And so I do understand, especially for kindergarten. I'm trying to think, in March, when I was in the classroom up in New York City, I was able to kind of guide my my first graders through all things ed. And that first week of school, I would definitely encourage you guys, as you guys get new students, to give them a tour of ed. Hopefully we won't be so dependent on the digital version that we were this year. But I would say, hey guys, here's what your screen is gonna look like when you guys log on, and anything important. And again, I definitely encourage you guys to change that due date so that the student doesn't have to go, especially for kindergartners, have to go in and look at assignments. You're going to want them for it to automatically pop up on their dashboard so that they could just press start and go at it from there. And that's done as easily as just changing that due date. All right. Going through the data, the most commonly, and then the recommended groups. With the standards report, if you want to go click over to that tab, again, it's going to give you a brief look where everybody is in accordance with your standards. This report allows you to view the proficiency by standard to see where your student's struggling or has mastered key standards so that you can provide the appropriate instruction. In regards to the standards, you're going to go into the Bridge and Grow and pull up the resources to build the bridge and grow them into that standard. So under your resource tab, under your Discover, that first resource is this Bridge and Grow. And going into Bridge and Grow, you're going to want to go to the Excel spreadsheet. And let me go ahead and open that up. And it's going to open up, or if you guys don't have Microsoft programs, it'll download and then you could open it up in Google. But it allows you to filter out by grade and then also by standard. So you're going to take that information you get from the standards report, and let's say they didn't do so well on a particular standard. As you go across the Excel spreadsheet, it's going to tell you the resource title and the component to use to kind of help build that bridge. So it might be anchor charts, read and respond journals, graphic organizers. There's a lot of different things that you can do to address those specific standards. You can also, whenever you go into your standards report, again, you could view all the resources by standards, by module within Ed. And so when under your Discover tab, you can go to standards, go to Virginia. We're gonna go to, for time purposes, you can go into the individual standards, and once you find the standard you're looking for, it's gonna list all the resources to the right that addresses the standard. So once you click on the resources, you'll be able to see. And yay, my alpha friends. All right. I think, are there any questions about into reading and the assessments and the reports that it spits out at you? It gives you a lot of different information. I talked to you. I'm just making sure that I've covered everything. Let's really talk about differentiating based on data. So after reviewing all the data and you've determined that you need to address certain standards or certain topics, maybe like author's purpose, and you grouped your students and you looked at the resources, into reading gives you a bunch of different options for differentiation. So you've got your Rigby leveled readers, and so you could select those. You have 90 titles for each grade in kindergarten through grade 5. So you could use that to address author's purpose. You have your tabletop mini lessons for reading. This is another resource to support small group, along with the anchor charts and graphic organizers. For those students that require English language support, you have your call outs in the teacher's guides, but you also have the tabletop mini lessons for English language support. And then your Start Right readers, which are those highly decodable texts, which feature different storylines and topics each week. And so you guys have all of those resources. Trying to think, see what else. You always have the option to go into Ed and get more help. And so, welcome teacher, help, the question mark. And then you go in and access help in regards to assessments. And I'm going to say, I think after we've covered all of those, we've covered everything in regards to assessments, which is going to leave us for questions.
I'm also going to put the link in the chat right now for our survey that we would like you to please complete at your earliest convenience. And this gives us feedback and how to continue helping you and supporting you.
I'm going to drop the Teacher's Corner video onto my Padlet. I'm not going to drop the Teacher's Corner video onto my Padlet. I will upload it and send you guys the link to the video, just if you guys have any more questions about Teacher's Corner.
Mm-hmm. We can put it on our site as well. Thank you.
And I am trying to look at the questions to see if there was really anything else more with to address with the K1s.
Mm-hmm.
Please make sure you complete the survey and ask questions, because after that, what we do is we talk with Genevieve, and then we answer questions in-house, and then we respond to you by personal email or as a group. So please make sure you do that. If you did not hear back from your question, that's because we're still working on a couple of them, okay? But please make sure you complete that survey.
I was going to say, data is not as fun as looking at different resources, because I feel like the last presentation, I'm like, no, look here. And I'm showing you shiny objects left and right to utilize, but data is super important. So.
Well, and there's so many assessments, and the big thing that I hope people walk away with today is really think about the assessment that you're giving and the ones that you've always given, and then make good decisions on what you want this assessment to tell you, and then use that data to change your instruction. Right? You can't hear me?
No.
So just use that data, thanks Stacy, to change that instruction.
So she said it's important to really analyze all of the assessments that we have before us, determine which ones you want to use, and determine why you're using them and what information you want to gather from them so that you can make instructional decisions from there and best serve your students.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for attending today. Please just fill out the survey. Let us know if you need anything, and have a great rest of your school year. We only have a couple of weeks left. We appreciate your time this morning.
Perfect.
Genevieve, we will see you in about 20 minutes.
Yep.